These are devotions for people at a social distance. This morning I am reading in the book of Acts, the 5th chapter. I'll start at verse 17. Then the high priest took action, he and all who were with him, that is, the sect of the Sadducees, being filled with jealousy, arrested the apostles and put them in the public prison. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the prison doors, brought them out, and said, "Go, stand in the temple and tell the people the whole message about this life." When they heard this, they entered the temple at daybreak and went on with their teaching. And I was kind of thinking about that story in the book of the Acts, and it made me think that this is actually a theme or a trope that the author of the book of Acts, traditionally named Luke, keeps coming back to as this story goes on. There will be a number of what I would call supernatural jailbreaks. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because every time there's one of these supernatural jailbreaks, the story gets a little bit more elaborate and there's a few more details. And actually, as we go along in the book, there is actually more and more concern for the guards in these prisons whose lives are put into danger because of these jailbreaks. And it's kind of interesting how this trope develops and repeats throughout the book of the Acts. And I think I understand a bit of why Luke keeps coming back to this trope, why he continues to repeat it. He obviously does it intentionally, and he wants us to read these with increasing attention. And the underlying theme, of course, is simply this, that the message about Jesus, what's called the message about this life in this passage, cannot be repressed. The people who are in power, people who have authority, want to repress it. They use strong measures, they use threats, and they use violence, and they use prison to try and shut down this message, but it cannot be shut down. That there is a message here that is so powerful that threats and violence and force are not going to make it stop. And this is something that I think certainly applies to light today. It applies, of course, to the Christian gospel, but it also applies to some of the inconvenient messages that we are hearing in our society. There are people standing up in protest right now who are saying things, who are shouting things that people who are in power and people who have authority find rather inconvenient, that they don't particularly like. And as a result, of course, there is resistance. And some of that resistance is powerful and forceful and indeed can become very violent. And the message I see coming loud and clear from the book of Acts is just because people who have power and authority find a message inconvenient, they don't want to deal with the implications of that message and try and shut it down, they will not succeed. You cannot put the genie back into the bottle. You cannot repress a powerful message when it is tied to the truth. And that applies, yes, to the Christian gospel, the message about this life. It applies to some of the challenges lying deep in our society, especially related to racism, that will not be simply shut down because they are opposed by powerful people. And we have a God who seems to delight to make sure that that's what happens. That's the theme I see coming out in the book of Acts, and I see that happening in our world today. I'm rather glad, even though I might find some of the messages that people are shouting out these days a little inconvenient to me, that they won't simply be shut down because people find them inconvenient. I'm thankful for a God who is dedicated, who is that dedicated, that a message of change gets out. Dear God, these are challenging times. There are messages out there that powerful people don't seem to like and would rather not have to deal with and would rather shut down. Thank you. Thank you that you are a God who is dedicated in making sure that the things that are whispered in quiet places are shouted from the rooftops. Thank you that you are a God who challenges your people to continue to work through change, to create a better, more just society. And thank you that the message for this life is still proclaimed loudly and still has the power to transform lives. Amen.